Chapter 8. Soon after Rosethorn and Briar's return, everyone but Triss went back to bed. Dahlia was exhausted from her work in the forge, Lark and Sandry from spelling cloth to keep disease at bay. Not long after they went to their rooms, novices came with fresh supplies of oils, powders, and clothing. Triss directed them to Lark's workshop and watched as they placed their supplies along the wall. She noticed that the big makeshift table in the workshop had to be scrubbed, the wood cleaned of anything from the day before. Triss did that first. It was the only thing she could help with. The dull work of blending fresh ingredients into a paste that blazed with magical strength, then rubbing it into cloth, was Lark and Sandry's craft. Once the table was clean, scrubbed with sand, and wiped down with an infusion of thyme leaves, Triss checked the cold box. Rosethorn's and Briar's arrival had caught her by surprise. Until now, Lark and Sandry had been too weary to eat anything but soup at the end of the day, and Dahlia had taken her meals with Frostpine and Kirill. Triss didn't have the supplies she needed to feed the entire cottage again. Picking up 2 baskets, she walked out onto the spiral road that wound through the temple community. It would take her to the central kitchens at the hub. On her way back to Discipline, Triss didn't realize she had company until long hands wrapped around one of her baskets and tugged. Looking up with a sharp comment ready for the interloper, she saw Dedicate Crane. She surrendered the basket without an argument. Work was good for Crane. "You look terrible," she informed him. "And doesn't that wash off?" She pointed to the red thumbprint between his eyes. "Rosethorn and Briar still have theirs from this morning." "I spelled it to last for weeks," Crane drawled. "It is better so, particularly when one is known to be exposed to the disease regularly. And I am sorry I do not meet your qualifications for male beauty. I have been working." "You look like you need a rest," she replied. "It won't do anyone good to have you fall ill from overwork." "You are too young to sound like my former governess," Crane informed her as they walked across the road to Discipline. Little Bear came bounding out, set to give Triss his usual hysterical greeting. When he saw her companion, the dog raced back inside. On his frequent visits to the cottage after he had asked for Lark's help, Crane had made his opinion of enthusiastic dogs very clear. "They must be up," Triss said, allowing the man to open the gate for her. Little Bear sticking close to Briar. "Fortunate Briar," murmured Crane as they went inside. The cottage's inhabitants were seated at the table, clutching steaming cups of tea. Rosethorn's head came up when she saw Crane. "Turn right back around," she said tartly. "I didn't escape quarantine to get buckled into your harness." Triss took her basket from Crane and carried everything back into the kitchen area. Sandry brought the man a chair from Lark's workroom. "Charming as ever," Crane remarked as he arranged himself in the chair. "How ever did they manage to entertain you at Erda's house?" "Only you could make Erda's house sound like an ill wish," Rosethorn growled. Crane raised a single eyebrow. "I would have had to care about the place to ill wish it," he informed her. "I assume their own poor management is curse enough for them." "How would you know about their management or anything else?" demanded Rosethorn. "You wouldn't sully the purity of your habits by going anywhere near the mire." "Shall I point out that your mission of mercy to the impoverished resulted in your enforced stay?" drawled Crane. "On second thought, I shall not. You so frequently assure me that you are attentive to all things that I must believe that you spent your last week in quarantine by design." "Will you both just stop?" Lark asked wearily. "There's nothing to be gained by bickering." She smiled a thank you at Triss, who was setting bowls and plates on the table. Sandry got up to help, but Triss waved her back into her seat. Within a few moments, everyone was able to help themselves to the food sent by the temple's finest cooks. When Rosethorn put down her fork, Crane said, "With regard to your time—" "No!" Briar said hotly, glaring at Crane. "Let her be! Find somebody more important. She did her bit, and she needs rest." When Rosethorn put a hand on his arm, he shook her off. "I know you swore to serve folk when you got dedicated," he told her. "But you got to be sensible, and if you won't speak up, I will." He glared at Crane, who regarded him as if he were a bug. "Find one of them great mages that's up to your weight," insisted the boy. "One of them great mages," Crane repeated tonelessly. "Are you serious?" He looked at each of the 4, brows arched, mouth pursed. None of you has the least notion, I take it." The young people stared at Lark, then Rosethorn, confused. Both women looked down, not meeting their charge's eyes. Tris scowled at Crane. "The least notion of what?" Crane sighed and fanned himself with a linen handkerchief. "Rosethorn is a great mage. She is one of the most powerful with regard to medicine and plants in all of the Pebbled Sea and its environs." "He says one of because he means he's another," muttered Rosethorn. She poured herself a fresh cup of tea. Crane sniffed. "Surely that is obvious." To the four he said, "Winding Circle is the rival of the University at Lightsbridge in the renown and quality of its mage teachers. It is famed from Yanjing to Blaze Ice Bay." He sighed. "You didn't know about Winding Circle either. How charming." "We knew that Nico's a great mage," said Triss. "Someone we met last fall told us." Crane inclined his head in agreement as regally as any king. "Lark, too, is a great mage, for all she came to it later in life," he went on. "Frostpine is the greatest of all the smith mages of our time. None other can work with all kinds of metal, except young Daja here." Briar, Sandry, and Triss looked at Daja, who shrugged. She had known of Frostpine's reputation for a year, but had chosen not to speak of it much. Frostpine wanted to teach her. Nothing else mattered. Crane went on. "You four have the honor of studying with teachers of royal magnitude. How you could be ignorant of their stature!" The young people looked down, embarrassed. "Oh, cork it," said Rosethorn, glaring at the man. "Don't belabor the point. It happens that we are the best teachers for their talents. That's all they've ever needed to know. If you have something really important to say, say it. I want to go back to bed." Crane spread his handkerchief on the table and fussed with it, folding it into a series of tiny pleats. After a moment he said quietly, "Very well. Here it is, with no flourishes. Most of those who sent to work with me are hopeless. I have no time to both teach them and uncover the nature of this disease. You know this work must be done quickly and accurately by masters, not green students." "I'm so tired," Rosethorn muttered. She looked up, meeting Crane's eyes. "You don't need me. You have a diagnosis oil. You must be halfway to a cure." "If I am, it is news to me," replied Crane acidly. "Finding the oil was luck. As far as divining the heart of the disease, I have done test after test without result." He took a deep breath. "We have our differences, but you know, and I hope you would know, that I respect your gifts and your knowledge. You are needed." Briar was uneasy, hearing so proud a man do what sounded too close to begging for comfort. He knew without even reaching out that the girls felt it too. He wanted to offer help, but there was too much unpleasantness between him and Crane. In the man's eyes, he was a low-bred thief. Briar did steal the shackan from Crane's greenhouse, and in Briar's experience, moneybags like Crane never changed their minds about people like him. "I'll help," Rosethorn looked at Crane. "You knew I would." Crane relaxed, giving something that sounded like a sigh of relief. "I thought you might want me to beg just a while longer." "Once they stop fussing, they really do well together," Lark explained to the young people. With a glare at the other two adults, she added, "They just have to get the fuss out of the way." "She has no system," began Crane. "He'd rather criticize how people work," added Rosethorn. "You see what I mean?" Lark told the four. "We've never handled a brand new disease, though we know the theory," Crane pointed out quietly. "Finding cures for the current manifestation of old diseases is our strongest area of expertise." "You tried all the procedures for known diseases?" Rosethorn asked suddenly. "The smallpox ones and the measles ones, just in case?" Crane looked down his lofty nose. "You must be mistaking me for an apprentice," he told her coolly. "It was the first thing I did." Rosethorn made a face. "All right. Speaking of apprentices," Crane looked at Briar. "No. Absolutely not." "Absolutely yes," snapped Rosethorn as Briar glared at Crane. "You don't have to work with him. I don't want him in my greenhouse. He's thorough. He does exactly what he's told, and he has the steadiest hands of anyone in Winding Circle," Rosethorn informed Crane. Briar gaped at her. So much praise from Rosethorn was unnerving. Until the start of quarantine, he could count on his fingers the number of times she'd so much as said, "Good job," and still have plenty of fingers left. Crane raised his brows. "I know he possesses steady, faint hands. He is a pickpocket." "You're in no position to refuse," Rosethorn told him. "I need to know if he can do this. There are too few of us who have any aptitude for it. If he's one, we'll find out." Crane sighed and looked at Briar. "Keep out of my way," he warned, getting up. Briar was about to spit on the floor to show his opinion of the man, but Rosethorn caught his eye. He didn't need to mind-speak with her to see the warning in her face. Lark put out a hand to delay Crane's departure. "Sandry, the new masks and gloves." Sandry departed into their workroom, and as Lark asked Crane, "How are you on the spelled robes and foot covers?" "We have enough for tomorrow and the day after," Crane replied. "I suppose we will need smaller ones, though. For the boy." He said it without looking at Briar. Sandry returned with a metal box. She squinted as she handed it to Crane. The other three turned their faces away from the blaze of magic that coming from the protections on the box and from its contents. "What's the matter with them?" Crane wanted to know. "They see magic," explained Lark. "Don't you?" "No," Crane admitted. "I have a visualization potion I use when I need to see it, but I confess it makes my skin break out." "Rosethorn?" She sighed. "I know. Dawn. Get some sleep." Crane thanked Lark and walked out into the gray afternoon. "I don't like him," Briar growled softly. "You don't have to," said Rosethorn, getting to her feet with a yawn. "I won't do it," retorted Briar. "I just won't." Rosethorn lifted her own eyebrows, enough like Crane that Briar, who'd never seen a resemblance before now, blinked at her. "There are adult mages, rejoicing in great power and knowledge, who would kill for the chance to work with Dedicate Crane," she informed him. Then her mouth twitched. "Of course, they don't know him personally." Sandra giggled. "It won't kill either of us, though we may wish it had," said Rosethorn. "I'm going back to bed. So should you. We're due at the greenhouse first thing tomorrow." Briar, about to argue, choked. He had been inside the Air Temple's greenhouse only once, to steal the shotgun. After that, he wasn't even allowed to loiter near it, to glimpse at the unknown plant treasures inside. "Oh, didn't I mention that?" asked Rosethorn, her voice a little too innocent. "Crane's workroom is inside the greenhouse." She sauntered into her room and closed the door. "She must feel some better if she's tormenting people," said Lark, standing. "I'd better get to work." She walked into her workroom. Sandry followed and closed the door as Triss and Briar gathered up the dishes. He splashed through the sewers in a pure white novice's robe that was much too big for him. He wore nothing under it, and, to his shock and disgust, he was barefoot. His bare toes sank through inches of the kind of muck that made his guts crawl to think of. "Come on," ordered Flick. He saw her clearly, though neither of them carried lamps. "We'll miss your birthday party." She was properly dressed in rags and shoddy boots, jigging in her eagerness to move along. Briar muttered about not having a birthday, let alone a party, but he followed as quickly as the habit would allow. She was moving farther off down the pipe. "Wait up!" he called, trying to lift the habit's skirts. Flick only laughed and ran on. The tunnel bent around a corner. When he cleared it, Flick was nowhere in sight. "Hey!" he yelled. "Where'd you go? Where'd you get to?" Her laugh emerged from an opening several feet away. He followed the sound and saw Flick well ahead. "Wait!" "Briar's getting slow, Briar's getting slow," she taunted. He sighed. She had done this just before the long night holiday, when he'd followed her through the warren of streets in the worst part of the mire. She'd almost given him the slip then, just as now. He wasn't about to lose her, not down here. The pipe shrank, forcing him to walk hunched over. With every step he took, she seemed to take 3. "You got to slow down," he cried. "You got to speed up," she retorted, and giggled. "Will you just wait?" he demanded. The filthy water rose, eddying around his calves, then his knees. It dragged on the habit, pulling him back. "I can't, Briar," she said, voice somber. "I can't wait, even if it is your birthday." "Flick!" he cried, battling water and habit to close with her. "Stop!" The girl shrugged and ran off down the pipe. Briar watched in panic as she got farther and farther away. Something bad lay ahead. If he lost sight of her, it would be the end. He shook the habit impatiently and pumped his suddenly weak legs, fighting to gain speed. He was too slow. She was too quick. She grew smaller and smaller. "Flick!" he screamed, and she was gone. He was awake. If his bed hadn't been a mattress on the floor, he might have fallen out. Instead, Briar thrashed his way out of the covers that tangled around him. Little Bear whined and licked sweat off the boy's face. Panting, Briar sat out the shakes, clenching his hands as he remembered how he couldn't hold Flick. Not in a dream, not in Erda's house. How could he have let her die, with all this magic to serve him? He didn't try hard enough. If he had, Flick would be alive. He'd as good as killed her himself by not doing more. Sandra came in, which was only to be expected. Her bedroom was across from his. In one open palm she carried her night lamp, the round dirty stone that Briar, Tris, and Dahlia had spelled a year before to hold light for her. Sandra was afraid of the dark. On nights like this, Briar didn't blame her in the least. She sat next to him on the mattress, her white nightdress billowing. Her stone lamp went on the floor in front of them. After a moment, Briar whispered, "Maybe I should pick yesterday for a birthday. The day Flick died." "Whatever for?" asked Sandra quietly. "Birthdays are supposed to be happy days." "But then I'd be remembering her, right? She wouldn't be dead if I remembered her on my birthday. It wouldn't be so bad that I let her go." "That isn't the way to remember her, Briar," Sandra told him gravely, sounding as kind and wise as Lark. "She wouldn't like it." Briar shook his head. "How would you know what she'd like and what she wouldn't?" Sandra rubbed her hand over his hair. "Because no one who's truly your friend would want you to feel bad for knowing them." That struck home. He would need to think it over, of course, but he had the sense that she was in the right of it. Dahlia arrived next, a lit incense stick in her finger. It gave off a fragrant, rose-scented smoke as she waved it in each corner, chasing out bad air as traders did for nightmares. Once finished, she sat cross-legged on the floor, putting the incense holder in a little holder beside the lamp. Last of all came Tris, a black crocheted shawl over her nightgown. On one forefinger she carried a ruffled bird that blinked sleepily. The other three stared at the bird in wonder. The summer before, they had helped Tris raise a young starling named Shriek. In the autumn, after their return from a trip to northern Emelon, Shriek had taken wing with a flock of other starlings headed south. Since no other birds of his kind came near humans, they had to believe that this was Shriek, back after months away. Tris held the starling out to Briar. He took the bird gently as Tris sat, fussing with her nightgown and shawl until they were arranged to her satisfaction. When Briar returned her starling, Shriek trundled up her arm and into her unruly curls, where he promptly went back to sleep. Little Bear settled too, warming Briar's back. The four remained silent, thinking their own thoughts, as the night slowly wound down. If Rosethorn had any thoughts when she entered Briar's room before dawn and found all four of her charges sleeping there, she kept them to herself. Instead, she woke the boy without disturbing the others and signaled that he'd better get ready to go. Air Temple services were held at dawn. Soon after the hymns of greeting to the sun ended, Crane and a company of young men and women in Air Temple yellow, water blue, or novice white came to the greenhouse door where Rosethorn and Briar waited. Briar squinted at Crane's following. Every one of them sported a large crimson dot on the forehead, to tell the world that they didn't have the blue pox. He was also curious. Didn't Crane say he had no help just the day before? Who were these people then? Rosethorn, Crane said. He looked at Briar and sniffed, then unlocked the door. It opened into a third of the greenhouse Briar had never seen, hidden behind drapes on its glass walls. Osprey, show the boy our cleanup procedures. Make sure he is thorough. Then take him around. The water dedicate and Rosethorn, Crane said. To the water dedicate and Rosethorn, Crane said, "It will be some time before the cleansing and robing rooms are clear. I have tea waiting in my office." Osprey, Crane's yellow-robed apprentice, was a full-figured young woman with curly black hair. She sized Briar up through eyes a darker shade of green than his own, nodded, and jerked her head at the door. Briar followed, as did all of the other workers. The men actually showed him the scrubbing procedure, since the woman cleaned up in a separate cubicle. It worked much like the bath in the tent the day before, which was almost comforting. Briar recognized medicinal herbs and oils in the rinses as well as in the soaps, ones he knew well. Better still, this washroom was warmer than the tent had been, and the sun's early rays struck the high glass walls over the shrouding drapes. The whole building began to heat up. Once they were clean, Briar and the young men donned treated caps, robes, masks, gloves, stockings that tied up over the knee, and slippers. Everything in the boy's size lay under a slate with his name chalked on it. Once more he got a sense of Lark and Sandry and all that he put on. It gave him heart, as it had done at Erda's house. "I don't envy this lad," a young man commented. "He has to work in the master's private workroom." "Don't get too comfortable," advised another man, tying on his mask. "Nobody lured into his lordship's private lair has lasted a whole day. Some of us outer workroom slaves have endured a week or more." They led him into a big room filled with cabinets, braziers, counters, water kettles, and a vast tub that held steaming water by a glass wall. Once he had adjusted to the glitter of magic that lay over it all, and the heavy scent of cleansing oils and washes, Briar was fascinated. All the floors and walls were hard glazed tile or marble, except for the longest glass wall in the ceiling. When Briar knelt to inspect a drain in the floor, a youth said, "Every night while we're gone, they fill both the inner and outer workrooms with steam. It carries special chemicals and oils to purify everything. All our cabinets are tight-fitted to keep water out, and we leave the glass and porcelain on the counters to be cleansed. It costs, but his lordship dedicated his personal fortune to the greenhouse." Osprey told Briar who everyone was, pointing to each as she gave the name. "No sense memorizing them, though," she said, her black fringed green eyes dancing over her masks. "Most of them will be gone in a few days." "Please, gods," chorused her crew. They were laying out bottles, trays, measuring spoons, and countless other mysterious objects that Briar couldn't name. "When he ejects you from the inner workroom, come have supper with us at the table of the useless in the dining hall," suggested a man called Acacia. "That's what, 20 now? We had to move 2 tables together last night." Briar stared at them. He felt as if he had been magically transported to a foreign land where he spoke none of the language. One day ago he'd been trapped in a damp, gloomy house, where people raved in fever dreams, and those who cared for them did so in tight-lipped silence. Now he was in a room filled with light air and warmth, among people who joked as if the Bluepox were inconvenient, as if their were a life away from sickbeds and the biting scent of willowbark tea. Only when he noted the speed at which they worked, writing labels, filling bottles and jars, loading wild wire racks with glassware, scrubbing, mincing bundles of herbs, did he think these people knew that things were desperate at Erda's house and the other infirmaries. At a wall to an open doorway to Crane's lair, he assumed, 2 gloved, robed, and masked figures labored in silence. Briar moved close to watch as they drew liquid through narrow holes in sealed jars, dripped it into inch-deep wells into a thick crystal plate. "They have a scary job," Osprey said quietly in Briar's ear. When he looked at her, she explained. "They infuse the disease in those jars. The samples we get," she pointed to stacks of familiar-looking metal boxes near the 2 silent workers, "are steeped in a special liquid. It draws out the essence of the disease, then fades. Only the Bluepox remains. Samples from each patient go into a row of 7 wells, 3 such rows to a tray. That goes into the other workroom for his lordship to play with. Out here we all handle the disease. People tire quickly on that task, and we don't dare make any mistakes. Our robes aren't airtight. One little droplet would be deadly." "They dish out Bluepox?" whispered Briar, not sure he'd understood her properly. "It's not the pox that kills people, you know," said Osprey, watching the pair as intently as Briar. "It's the fever that comes with it." "I know," he replied bleakly. Osprey glanced at him. "Wait, didn't someone tell me it was you and Dedicate Rosethorn? At Erda's house?" Briar nodded. Slowly he walked over until he could see the liquid as it was poured. This was the enemy that killed Flick, drooling in pale gold strings from tiny glass ladles. "Come on," Osprey said when he moved away from the jars. "Here's the inner workroom." She motioned toward the open doorway next to the Bluepox workers. If the outer workroom was grand, the inner was enough to stagger a boy from Deadman's district, once he could see through the blaze of magic that shone everywhere. 2 walls were entirely glass. 2 were covered with valuable porcelain tiles that reached down from the marble floor to the glass roof. Long counters ran down both glass walls, and a third of the longer tiled wall. Every other inch of wall space, even under the counters, held watertight cabinets. Only the tall cabinets against the long tiled wall held no doors. On their shelves rested crystal trays used for blue pox samples. Crane wants you working up trays, Osprey pointed to the table at the tiled wall. Between the open cabinets, a large slate hung there with a detailed list of instructions written in chalk. On the table was a stepped rack of thin bottles. Each bottle sported a paper label. 7 also bore a string from which a numbered paper tag hung. You'll get your trays here, once the blue box is added. She went to the open cabinet at their right, between the table and the doorway to the outer workroom. Always keep the trays level. Very carefully she lifted one from the shelf, because if you tilt them, the blue box will drip out. That is bad. Lucky, yes, whispered Briar. If any gets into the other wells on the tray, the whole thing's ruined. If you leak or drip, whatever happens, don't make a fuss. Bring it quietly into the washers at the tub. If Crane finds out you slipped, you're out. A dreadful fate, to be sure, muttered Briar, startling a chuckle from her. Made bold by that, he added, I don't see how you could work with that bag. You seem all right, but he's such a pickled-faced cull from an overbred litter. I don't know how you work with Rosethorn without bleeding to death, she said frankly. She's that sharp with everyone. Her eyes met Briar's over their masks. Both of them smiled. To each his or her own, I suppose, Osprey admitted. Now, trays. Put the glass lid aside very gently. Very gently. Follow the instructions on the board there. Briar read them carefully. To well numbered 1, add 2 drops liquid from bottle numbered 1. To well numbered 2, add 1 drop liquid from bottle numbered 2. To well numbered 3, add 1 measure powder from bottle numbered 3. To well numbered 4, add 3 drops liquid from bottle numbered 4. To well number 5, add 2 drops liquid from bottle number 5. To well numbered 6, add 1 drop liquid from bottle numbered 6. To well numbered 7, add 1 drop liquid from bottle numbered 7. Glancing at the tray as Osprey drew liquids or powders from each of the numbered bottles and slid them into the wells, he saw that a number was cut into the stone beside each well. There were 7 in a row, which meant they tried 7 possible cures on the pox liquid from 3 different people, all on one tray. I can do this, he remarked, surprised. All you need is the ability to pay attention and steady hands, Osprey remarked. Once you're done, she eased the glass lid onto the tray and secured it. Then she put the tray on a shelf in the cabinet to their left. You can't let your mind wander. Once things get started, Crane and whoever is helping him will exchange the instructions on your board, she explained. I'll help you get any new supplies and change the number tags, at least until you get the hang of things. You're smart, or Rosethorn never would have borne with you for a whole year. Uh-oh. Osprey had seen something in the outer workroom that she didn't like. Briar followed her as she hurried through the doorway. Yellow Rose, careful, she told one of the pair handling the blue pox essence. Your sleeve, your left sleeve. The youth about to drip his measure into the jar froze. The string that gathered his sleeve at one wrist had come undone. The sleeve had escaped the cuff on his glove to hang perilously close to the tray he was filling. Crane, Rosethorn, and the water dedicate had come in, washed and roped. You! Crane pointed to Yellow Rose, his hand drooping from a rigid, accusing forefinger. Yellow Rose, out! I didn't get it in, protested the youth. Out! Crane repeated icily. Now! Yellowstone put down his measure and did as he was told. As he walked to the washroom, Briar saw a number of gloved hands pat the reject in comfort. Crane went to the glass wall behind the large boiling vat, wiped away the steam, and rapped on the glass. A face pressed against it on the outside. A temple runner. 2 more helpers, Crane said loudly. 2, understand. 2, a girl murmured. In case someone else errs, said Crane. He turned to inspect the room, his weary brown eyes missing nothing. He pointed out things for each worker to correct, then entered the inner workroom. Come on, Rosethorn muttered to Briar. Time to get your feet wet.